Good morning, afternoon, and evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the discussion on urban sharing. I'm English announcer Jessica Lee, and today I've given the honor of being the moderator for this session. And before we begin, we'd like to extend our sincere gratitude for joining us today at this virtual and international conference. Thank you. And COVID-19 has slowed down the pace of life, and our city's function has been paralyzed to prevent the spread of this infectious disease. What should we do to restore city's publicness and resilience in the post-COVID-19 era? So today, let's invite domestic and international experts to talk about the direction of sustainable urban sharing. And before we begin, for your information, we're running today's discussion live over the English version of Seoul City's YouTube channel in real time. So please do the final check of your webcam, network connection, and also your microphone. Thank you. Now, please allow me to introduce the chairperson and our panelists of this session. And first of all, Director General of Seoul Innovation Bureau, Seon-Ae Jeong, attended from Korea as a panelist. Thank you. And we're also joined by Mr. Seung-Won Lee, researcher of the Center for Asian Urban Societies of Seoul National University. Thank you very much for your presence. And we're also joined by Mr. Alvaro Porro, a commissioner of social economy and local development and food policies in Barcelona. Hello.
Hello.
Gracias. Thank you very much for your time. And next, we have Mr. Herman van Spreng, co-founder of Sharing Cities Alliance via webcam as well. Hello.
A pleasure to be with you. Thank you.
Glad to meet you too. Thank you. And next, we also have Mr. Christian Iaione, professor at Lewis University in Italy. Hello.
Hello, hi, hello. Thank you for your invitation. Hi.
Thank you. Thank you for your time again. And we are also joined by Mr. Michel Bowens from P2P Foundation, attended from abroad. Hello.
Yes, thanks for inviting me, and I'm happy to see some known faces.
Thank you for being with us. Thank you. And next, it's my great honor and privilege to introduce Mr. Baegyoon Park, who will be the chairperson for this session. He is the director of the Center for Asian Urban Societies at Seoul National University. And based on his interest in the urban economy, the Chairman Park has continued his research and activities on urban commerce, including the urban common land movement. Then now, today's moderator will commence the discussion. So, Mr. Baegyoon Park, the floor is yours.
네, 안녕하세요. 서울대 아시아.
Hello, everyone. I am
박배균 교수입니다.
Director of the Center for Asian Urban Societies at the Seoul National University, Baegyoon Park. In the modern world, population, capital, resources, and information is concentrating in cities, leading to serious urban problems. It is true that cities are playing an important role, but as was stated, many urban problems do exist. Corona-19 also is spreading mostly in cities. Therefore, in order to overcome the COVID-19 situation, the city's responses are extremely important. And I think that is the reason why we are holding this conference on cities against COVID-19 Global Summit 2020. So we need to change our cities' scenarios that can solve various problems. And we have brought on this panel and this session experts from both home and abroad. We will now begin this session on exchanging urban sharing experiences. First, we will be hearing from Director General Seon-Ae Jeong from the Seoul Innovation Center. She's going to be talking about post-corona Seoul's future that is based on sharing and city transformation. She has worked for CCEJ and in other civil organizations, and she has also led the NPO Support Center.
이번 코로나19로 인한 팬데믹 상황에서
So
대한민국
we are faced with COVID-19, and Korea is being praised as one of the countries that is leading by example. As of 10 a.m. today, the number of confirmed cases was 896 and 4 dead.
최선을
Seoul
다해서
is home to 10 million population, and the city is dealing well to the pandemic thanks to the welfare as well as healthcare infrastructure. And as the mayor said, overreacting is much better than slow reacting,
감염원을
which shows how we have been rapidly responding to the pandemic. Also, the transparent
그리고
disclosure of information of the travel details of the confirmed patients was another example that helped Korea lead by example.
지난 4월 국회의원을
This slide shows the 21st general election.
선거
The voter turnout for the elections was 66.2%, which is estimated to be the highest in 28 years. And of course, temperature was checked in every single booth and every single spot.
많은
And all the voters had to wear masks and gloves.
이후에 감염은 급격히 확산되지 않았습니다.
And although the turnout was 66.2%, the number of confirmed cases did not spike after the election.
실시해서 감염
Also, for the first time in the world, Korea also conducted anonymous test.
100개 정도의 서울시에 있는 선별
At the same time, we have about 100
감염이 의심되는 사람
testing booths in Korea.
검사를 받을 수
And
있도록
Seoul City, as well as other cities, made sure to maintain anonymity of the people who came in the booth for testing.
많은 사람들이 불안해하고
And in terms of mask supplies, in the initial phases, we did not have enough supplies, which escalated the fear among the people. However, that got better over time with the right infrastructure.
일주일에 두 개씩
Korea was able to resolve the shortage of masks as the Korean government came up with a measure called the 5-day rotation system for mask distribution. And after that system,
시간에 약국에서 마스크를 구매할 수
people were allowed to purchase masks, and now people can purchase masks every single day.
해커들의 힘도 대단했습니다.
Also,
마스크
we
정보
had
시빅 해커들한테 공개를 했고 이
civic hackers who engaged in the fight against COVID-19, and the hackers disclosed the travel details of the confirmed patients, and they also uploaded the
어려운 취약계층들에게
supplies of the mask.
직접 면으로 된 마스크 혹은
And this shows local residents making masks
이 마스크를 구매하기
or donating masks for the vulnerable people.
이웃의 도움으로
And thanks to the help of these people, we were able to distribute masks to low-income families as well. And ABC News had a report on Korean volunteers who delivered food boxes to self-quarantined people.
마트가 텅텅 비어 있는 몇몇 도시들
And cities in the U.S. actually were empty
서울시의 한 자치구에
because people panic bought a lot of food, but then that wasn't the case in Korea.
간편식 등이 보입니다.
So as you can see on the photo, the supplies included all the necessities as well as rice and noodles
해외에서 귀국한 자가
for the self-quarantined.
집으로 이동하는 동안에
And for those who came to Korea from overseas and were self-quarantined, the volunteers also delivered food boxes to those people.
이루어졌습니다.
So the government provided a personal touch to all the people who were self-quarantined.
코로나 사회를 구상하고자
And this will drive our initiatives going forward as well to make sure that all the citizens participate in this movement to resolve urban inequality at the end of the day,
도시공공재의 재구성
as well as enhance citizens' competence. So
개발 등에 있어서 도시 커먼즈를
the
만드는 것이고
reorganization of urban lifestyle is all about urban public goods
연결되어야
and the
한다.
restoration of publicity, including medical, environmental, residential, as well as transport.
보다 접근 가능
To achieve this, we have to make sure that public goods reach a larger number of people.
협력적인 거버넌스
We need to aim for a virtuous circulation of our economy and provide the right policies to provide more public goods for people.
도시공공성 및
And to date, the city of Seoul has made much efforts to increase fairness.
부동산
And this year, in his tenure remarks, Mayor Park talked about his pledge to remove inequality in the city by providing safe house to the people.
공원으로 지정되어 있으나 장기간 공원
And in Korea, we have many parks that have been designated as parks but
있습니다.
do not serve as parks. And this July,
장기 미집행
the city of Seoul also decided to designate 67.5 kilometers out of the 117.2 kilometers of urban parks
결정했습니다.
and to turn them as natural park zones.
포함돼 있었는데
This will be significant in that parks will be designated as natural park zones for the people.
등록되지 않는 서울의 근현대 문화유산 가운데
And at the same time, we have some cultural relics in Korea. And the Seoul metropolitan government also started to designate some of the cultural heritages of Seoul since 2013. So as you can see on the slide, we have Seoul future heritage, including
수장권 방식으로 농기구를 만들 수 있는
the Bulgwang Forge, the blacksmith workshop, and as of 2019, we have 470 cultural heritages of Seoul.
확대하는 데 있어서 시민의 역량과
Also,
굉장히 무엇보다도
engaging more citizens in this endeavor is important,
시민
which is why Seoul City came up with the citizen participation budget system, in which citizens participate in the government's budget planning.
2년까지 단계적으로
So
편성하는 과정에 시민을
Uh,
참여시키고
it's a phased approach that we will take until 2022.
의원들이 해야 되는 당연한 내부 절차로
And of course, budgeting was considered a civil servant's job. However, that perception is changing with more people being engaged.
규모입니다.
And the scale that Seoul City is doing this is unprecedented.
시와 시민과 정부가 함께
And the government, as well as the city and the people, have joined together to create a platform. Now, when more than 1,000 people agree on one project, then that project must be dealt with directly by the mayor, who is responsible for answering the citizens' questions on that program. And some of the agenda was actually included in the city's plan for the future. Now, this is the scenario for the future.
수립할 예정입니다.
And we plan to establish a future scenario for the 2030 urban transformation this year.
시장회의가 화상으로 개최되었습니다.
And the city government summit was held recently. And Mayor Park proposed the Cities Alliance Against Pandemic, CAPP, so that all the cities can share information as well as physical resources in times of crisis.
공유 서밋에서도
And during the summit in November, we expect to see much results.
기여해 주시리라 믿습니다.
And I hope that many city leaders will join hands. Thank you.
감사합니다.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Director Jeong.
대표의 예측할 수 있는
Next, we will hear from co-founder of Share&L, Mr. Herman Van Sprang.
Cities Alliance 공동 대표이자 서울시
He is the head of a co-founder of Sharing Cities Alliance, and today he is going to be talking about the future of urban sharing.
Okay, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be part of this session, and I really hope that we can look forward to the future of our cities. I hope that everybody can see my slides right now. Maybe somebody can confirm if the screen is up. Yes, I think I can see that on the screen in the big room in Seoul, so that's good to see. So please allow me to first give a few personal perspectives. So some pictures that I took from what we call in the Netherlands the intelligence lockdown here in Amsterdam. So I'm just trying to see if the next slide is coming already to your screen, because I see, yeah, that's the one. I think we have a little delay, so I'll try to work around that. So if the next slide is coming up. I don't know in the meantime if technology can speed it up a little bit, because I can see on the big screen at least that it's still the previous slide. But if I'm not mistaken, we see now a picture of life in lockdown here in Amsterdam. I'm still trying to hear from some confirmation that this slide is up before I start. Yes. I think it will be the one. Sorry, I tried to deal a bit with a delay in the technology, so excuse me for that. This is just like a little perception of what is life in lockdown is here in Amsterdam. So you see, for example, our two daughters who are staying at home, and apart from all the technology that they have in their lives currently, of course, they also are actually making a puzzle. So I see that also going offline sometimes and staying inside is also maybe a good development somehow, especially for our kids. What we also see, of course, when I look at my two daughters who are 10 and 13 years old right now, is that, of course, their school transformed to new media like Skype and YouTube and Dropbox, etc. So teaching will be, of course, all digital, as we have seen all around the world. And it's something that I see that our kids, at least, are quite well adapting to, which is interesting to see, and also opening up your perspective of maybe how home education could be part of general education in the near future. What you also see is that, of course, we had to reinvent the classroom. So, for example, you see a picture in the right top corner where our two kids are on the front door stoop, so to say, and are doing a math class together while painting on the tiles here. And of course, we see different signs of the times. I have a park in front of my home, and where you see the signs being up to keep 1.5 meter distance in our society. So it's something that became quite known in just a short matter of time. I also have a picture here from, if you can see it, from a sort of an empty street. You see some tulips there, but you don't see tourists. And Amsterdam used to have a lot of tourists, but as you can imagine, they are all, or almost all, are gone. So we have empty streets, and it's really a different way of dealing with how we can sort of re-invite guests to our city in a futuristic way, so to say. And one picture when standing in line for ice cream. So I think some shops could be open as long as they were just doing takeout. So luckily we had some good days in Amsterdam with sun. And then everybody is keeping their distance, but going for a little ice cream there. I don't know if this next slide is already coming up. This is just like a bit of fun picture. This is my oldest daughter who tried to keep her sanity. So I think we all try to be safe in this period of time, but we also try to keep our sanity. And I think sometimes a little joke in and around the home is good to keep that sanity in place. And I think if this next slide is already coming up, this is maybe our family member that has the best position in this intelligent lockdown. This is our puppy dog lying on the couch and just really, I think, enjoying all the love that he gets from a family that is around the home all the time. But please allow me to also give you some perspectives of cities that are in our network. We are the Sharing Cities Alliance. We work with cities around the world. And I just asked some of our partner cities to provide one initiative that they've been taking in this period, dealing with COVID-19 and sort of finding a way out of it also while we are at this crisis situation. So, for example, I will wait a little bit before the next slide is up and coming again. For example, there since I think 2 days, restaurants are open again in Amsterdam and in the Netherlands. So what you see here is a concept by one of the restaurants where they really try to offer distance dining. So I think we all agree that maybe sitting outside is maybe a bit more safer even than sitting inside and dining inside. So this is one of the examples from Amsterdam that has been traveling around the world. It's been picked up by several media on how you could have distance dining in place. So really with those examples like these, I try to inspire, of course, also other cities around the world to think about these concepts. A different example is, for example, from the city of New York. The city of New York is, of course, also hit by the coronavirus quite heavily. Unfortunately. And one of the things that they encounter, of course, is that like all the intelligence that they have and all the consultancy reports, etc., from big consulting companies are maybe not predicting how the near future life will be in their cities and also in New York City. So one of the things that they did is like set up a neighborhood challenge to really let the crowd come up with a lot of ideas on how to open up the city again. And that goes for more participants from civil life, but also from businesses. The other side of this crowdsourcing platform is that they also try to sort of predict what the near future behavior will be of its citizens and its residents, but also its entrepreneurs. So it also gives them that perspective. This is just another example, and again, please, if there is too much delay in the slides or if I'm going too fast, please just let me know in the chat or in any other way. This is maybe a picture that you've seen from Singapore, which is also part of our Sharing Cities Alliance, where this Boston Dynamics robots are also on the streets and in the parks as a form of seeing to it that people keep their distances. So you see, of course, in different places in the world, technology coming in. And I think one very important element there is to see how this technology can be introduced in a balanced manner because of privacy matters, etc. So it's interesting to see this phenomenon as robots entering our lives and being sort of watchdogs. Yet another example is from the city of Gothenburg in Sweden, more in the north of Europe. And I think it's quite resembling the example that was already given in the first presentation from the Seoul government, where the citizens are trying to help making masks and producing them and also sharing them with the people that really need them. So this is just one of those examples also from the city of Gothenburg. Another city in the network of the Alliance is Cape Town in South Africa. And of course, many of those cities have many different examples of what they're doing to try to cope with the pandemic. But this is one as an answer to small and medium enterprises. and to really see to it that they, when they open up, that they can be as safely as possible be entered and business can be done. So they set together this toolkit for businesses around Cape Town to deal with the pandemic and to have safety in place. And this is just another example, totally different from Toronto, also a partner city, where they were thinking that, of course, people, if they want to go outside, that they want to, for example, see the cherry blossoms, in this case, in the city of Toronto. The thing is, of course, that it could be too crowdy. So they set up a YouTube channel, the same as, of course, you're doing for this conference now, and to give people the possibility to enjoy the blooming from their room. So I think it's maybe a good way to prevent long queues and crowds and let people enjoy nature even while they are in lockdown. Another example is coming from Paris. This is maybe near future material where they are thinking how the city could be moving towards a 15-minute concept. So can it be possible, is it possible to have as much of the facilities of a city within 15 minutes of distance of yourself? I think that will also make possible that it's much easier to walk anywhere, to bike anywhere, and not to have to be able to travel through the whole city. So that, for example, also has a mobility component. But it's interesting to see how you can redesign your cities and redesign your neighborhoods to grow to more vicinity and more close facilities of your city. And so I think this is more in line with my previous point, is that you see that we have to design cities for distance, at least for this very moment, until we know maybe more of how the spreading of the virus is actually happening. This is, for example, also a picture from New York City. And I think that we see the same around the world, also in Amsterdam, where we just pre-design how we can keep distance and space in, for example, public spaces like parks. And of course, something else is culture. It's really important to have also cultural events and of course entertainment back in place. It's difficult here in Amsterdam. Also, of course, theaters and cinemas, etc., have been closed. They're slowly opening up, but of course, they need to have bigger audiences in the near future. But how can we also see to it that culture maybe reinvents itself to be able to reach the audience and to have also some playfulness in the lives of people again soon? Because I think that's also really important, of course. And of course, it's also a bit in line with previous slides is, for example, an example from Milan, but we see different cities around the world, again, where we are thinking about, at least for the coming period, to give less room to cars and more rooms to pedestrians and people on bikes to move through the city in a safe and pleasant way. This is an example, as soon as the slide comes up, from Washington, D.C., which is also one of our premium partners of the Alliance. And we were able to briefly also think about this report with them. They made a great report, and I think also, again, municipalities all over the world are doing this, with a lot of recommendations in different fields, which they presented to their mayor, I think, about 2 weeks ago, on how you could reopen your city, because this is, of course, different stages in different cities around the world, but slowly you see more reopening of cities and facilities, etc. So how to deal with that? And I think in this case also it's really interesting that also DC, Washington, DC really looked into what are they doing already in other cities and how is that working well, or what are they bumping into? So maybe let me conclude then my last phase of this presentation, if I may, and that is giving you some more post-pandemic perspectives. It's just 10 thoughts, so they are changing all the time. I mean, this is permanent beta situation, of course, where we are all in. So it's just 10 random thoughts that we were having of what the cities of the post-pandemic era are growing to. One thought before I do so is that I was thinking about a ripple effect. And you all know the ripple effect. You throw the stone in the water and you get all these ripples, and it also could ripple back. What I think is that we also see this happening in our lives. And if you would take this small design that I just made easily on a slide here, so it could be more sophisticated in the near future. But if you would look at the inner circle and see that as the personal circle and your personal lifestyle, and you have your household or family around you, then the layer of a home, and then the community, of course. And around that community is the city. And I think that technology is a sort of a digital layer around our lives in communities and cities. And I think what we have seen in this period of time, especially when being in lockdown, is that the ripples or the circles closest around you are the circles or the ripples that you lean on and that you have to rely on the most. And we're trying to, of course, expand those ripples again more to communities and especially to cities. But will it ripple back? That's also the question. So, or are we leaning more towards our communities and our closer circles also in the post-pandemic era? That's to be seen. What we have heard, for example, is that working from home, which is of course happening the last few months, could stay. We have seen several tech companies, for example, already saying, okay, you could perhaps work from home forever. This has a big complications, maybe also, but implications for our lives, I think, for the functions of our home, for commuting, for the social part of working, etc. So what we really see is that the future of work that we've been talking about, I think, also before this pandemic is happening now and is at our doorsteps with all benefits, but also some challenges, I think. Another thing that we see is that we're going from global to local or even maybe hyper-local. That is something that I just explained with the ripple effect, and that is something that may not go away in the near future. Of course, if we're looking from the sharing economy and the commons perspective, at least what I see in my thriving community in Amsterdam is that there's more sharing going on, and really helping each other out and caring for each other is something that is coming to the surface. I'm really happy to see that. It's also a platform by the city of Amsterdam that has been introduced to give people easily access to all the initiatives that are being bottom up and really coming from the people in the city. Of course, my hope is that we will continue to see this development of sharing and caring for each other in our cities everywhere around the world in the post-pandemic era. Let me try to speed it up a little bit because of time constraints maybe. Is what I also see is that more people are of course going outside as soon as they're allowed to sort of get air, which makes them happy, I think, and to breathe and to have a little social contact on a distance manner with people in the community, and also to stay healthy. So I'm lucky to be living in front of a park. This is, by the way, not the park in front of my house. But I'm happy to be living in the front of a park, and you really see that the park is used over the last few weeks at least by many people sporting and doing yoga, etc., and doing distance little barbecues. So this is something that we all need to also come out of this lockdown situation to be safe, but also to be sane and to be healthy, and also mentally, of course. And I think this is more in line with that, that we need more green cities, especially when we are going to rely more on public facilities, but also, of course, as to climate action. I think we need much more green in our cities. That's, I think, goes without saying. And in relation to that, we will also see more urban farming and more harvesting of local food. Again, I see a little bit of the delay in the slides, but let me proceed. So soon you will see a slide about mobility. I think also when you look at mobility, that will change. We saw it already in some of the examples of the partner cities of the Alliance, is that you see a change in mobility. I mean, you've been locked down in your home. You are lucky if you could leave your home in the past period, of course, and do walks or step on your bike. This might continue in the near future, especially if cities make the infrastructure for micro-mobility, and maybe, hopefully, if people want to shy away from public transportation because of safety matters, that they don't just tap into their cars, but stick to walking and biking. And especially if we have this concept of a 15-minute city, I think that is really interesting. I think one of the very last slides then is This is a picture of my daughter. This was at an exhibition, I think, already a few years ago. But as soon as it comes up, she has this VR glasses. Yes, there you go, on her head. And I think, technology is coming into our lives quite rapidly. It has been, but it's maybe also increasing in this period of time, and especially also post-pandemic. I think we all think that it's really important that we can have technology in place for good, really balanced technology, beneficial to our lives, and not the other way around. So let's see to it that we can have technology in our lives and in our society in a way that we can benefit from it all and not see it as a threat. I think this is a picture. This is also pre-pandemic. This is just in our neighborhood. Again, the slide will come up in a second. It's interesting where neighbors live, of course, closely together, but there are the interior gardens in between sometimes. And this was a pilot project where you could be in touch with your neighbors across the garden through the basket in this case, and just send there a bread that you baked or a bottle of wine to share or something. So I was thinking, even in this pandemic era, it's interesting to see how we can find ways, and also sometimes playful and innovative ways, to stay connected, because I think, you all agree, is that the connection and the social connection between us all is so important, and that is something that we could be working on in the near future in our communities and neighborhoods. So to conclude, on one note, we want to go back to normal. On the other note is, I think, what we read all online and maybe discuss also online in different sessions, maybe we don't want to go back to normal because maybe that normal wasn't normal. So it's something to also discuss after the talks from the other participants. But let's think of a new normal. Let's think of a way forward that we can all thrive as societies and be resilient and have contact in place so that we can have livable cities, sharing cities for a long future to go together. And as my youngest daughter was looking over my shoulder last evening while I was finishing this slide deck, she said one important message is here for all of us: to never give up. So I think that's it for now. I hope I don't took too much of the time, and I'm really curious to hear the other speakers in this event. Thank you. Thank you.
네, 감사합니다. 지금
Thank you very much.
몇 가지 기술적인 문제와
So due to some technical issues, there were some delays, and
딜레이가 돼가지고
so we are a bit behind schedule, and that is why we are pressed for time at the moment, which may lead to a reduction in our panel discussion, and we kindly ask the other presenters to keep to their time.
하먼 밤스트뱅 대표님 발표 수고하셨습니다.
Thank you very much for the presentation.
이태리 루이스 대학 교수이자
Next, we'll hear from Italy. Professor Christian Iaioni, co-founder of LabGov, will present about the co-cities approach in the face of COVID-19. The floor is yours.
Thank you for the invitation. It's always a pleasure to share with Seoul and other colleagues from other cities in the world and practitioners from all over the world the content and the approach and the projects that we are carrying out, both as a university lab and also as a startup that is working side by side with several cities in Europe and the US. I guess you see my presentation already. This is what we call the co-cities approach, and The idea is basically was started in order to define a new approach in order to enable urban innovation, social and technological innovation, which when we started more than 10 years ago with work on the ground was based on the cooperation between city governments, the private sector, and in few cases with universities and research centers. Then, it became, and this became known as the triple helix approach. The idea was instead to change this framework and go from the triple helix to the quintuple helix, which is the source code of the co-cities approach. Which means that basically it's not enough to have a public, private, and knowledge institutions like universities partnership, but we need to have city inhabitants, innovators, informal groups, and civil society organizations as part of this governance of innovation in cities, in order to devise, to really make sure that, as was said before, innovation is something that is open to all, accessible, and even owned by all. And this is the basic instinct, the basic, I would say, insight that we came up by adopting and adapting the Elinor Ostrom's approach to the governance of the commons to the city. She was studying commons outside the city. We tried to adapt it and redesign it. And that's what came to be known as the 5 design principles of the co-city. Collective governance is the main one, which means that city inhabitants should not only have access to the city infrastructure and services, they also need to have a role in the management of services and infrastructure, and even in some cases the ownership, the stewardship of this infrastructure and services. This is only possible if the city government acts as an enabling state, like many cities are acting, like Seoul, like Barcelona, and many other cities in the world. Of course, it's important in order to have long-term sustainability for these projects, to create some economic sustainability, and that's what we call the pooling economies, which are neighborhood-based economies, economic ventures, collective economic ventures that are able to be managed by city inhabitants in these neighborhoods. And what we are witnessing in the last 5 years is that more and more city inhabitants are involved in projects that have a lot to do with a different view around the smart city. And that's what we call the tech justice principle, which means that city inhabitants start to own data, start to operate platforms. This is not possible unless we invest and cities invest on experimentalism. So this experimentalism has demonstrated the possibility to, relies on five tools: digital, institutional, learning, legal, and policy tools. But also, what I want to stress is the fact that these tools and these principles are embedded in 5 exemplary projects that I'm going to share in the next few minutes, that can be an example for how cities are fighting COVID-19 through the co-cities and the co-city approach. Basically, it's about the response as being based on a close and even closer cooperation around social and technological infrastructure in neighborhoods. A lot of cities, and especially the first one that I will mention, Reggio Emilia, which by now, in my humble opinion, is the most innovative city in Italy, are working side by side with city inhabitants in order to make communities more resilient in times when disconnection, social distancing becomes, of course, the need. So what is really important is that they created these neighborhood labs, that they went digital, and they through this governance approach that is rooted in citizenship pacts, we are creating new projects like the Coviolo or broadband wireless network. We know that how important it is to have a broadband connection. And you have neighborhoods in Reggio Emilia now that are managed through digital broadband networks that are managed by city inhabitants, and they use also the money that they produce by managing these networks to pay for social services, additional social services. This was only possible thanks to the institutional infrastructure that the city of Reggio Emilia implemented, which was based on this collaboratory. It's an open living lab for open and collaborative innovation in the city. And recently, the Chief Science Office, which is basically an office that is co-managed by Reggio Emilia and Luis University, that is providing all the insights for this missions-oriented public innovation unit, which is relying on what Mariana Mazzucato calls the mission economy. Missions-oriented innovation is going to be the key driver for urban innovation in the future. In Rome, what is happening is that, and I heard what Director Sonny Jeong spoke about before, about heritage, about parks, about new forms of urban mobility, and that's exactly what is happening in Rome as well, with the close cooperation with Luis Universities and other institutional actors like the City of Rome. We are creating in neighborhoods digital platforms that are enabling collaborative services, also through blockchain, in order for these community co-ops, legal entities that we incubated to manage these services and be close to city inhabitants in order to reach out to those who are in need, especially in the most complex and diverse neighborhoods. We are working a lot on the archaeological parks. Of course, in Rome, heritage is one key driver. And more recently, we initiated the new project on energy communities. The EU has passed this new law on community-based production of energy through distributed networks. So we are working with the National Agency for Sustainable Development in one neighborhood in Rome to devise that. My colleague, my dear friend Sheila Foster, professor at Georgetown University, she's working in different cities in the US and New York especially, but the signature project is in one of the most complex cities in the most divided city in the US, which is Baton Rouge. We are working there with the urban development arm's length agency of the city of Baton Rouge, Build Baton Rouge, and for what is called the community land bank, in order to put in the hands of city inhabitants also ownership of land and develop community-based initiatives. Another important thing is that in Italy we are working on a city-wide network of cities and public housing agencies in order to have different cities working on the housing of the future. What's going to be the housing of the future? It's a social infrastructure where you need to be able to do smart working, smart education, and also be a place where people can receive healthcare, which means that we need to make accessible to also low-income people innovations and technologies that are able to be tools for these people to get healthcare. At the EU level, instead, we created this, we are working with the city of Naples, Barcelona, Amsterdam, Ghent, Gdansk, Brezov, and Iași. These 7 cities created this civic state network, which is basically led by the city of Naples in order to do what? In order to make sure that the EU level, the EU Commission, through the URBAC program, understands the importance to create financial support, a new long-term investment plan in social infrastructure and urban commons, which means that the European Investment Bank, with which we are currently working, will devise a plan together with also long-term and social and ethical investors in order to make sure that in public investment is also put at the service of the urban commons as social infrastructure in cities. My last point is related to the need for a new breed of managers, that a new breed of what is called a new leadership, basically. We need to invest a lot on new educational programs, especially in universities, in order to have the new manager, the new executives of the multinational corporations, as well as city governments and nation states, enable this kind of approaches. They need to understand how it is important to make sure that city inhabitants and the users are being put in the condition to own a lot of these technologies, a lot of these innovation, even social innovations, because it was mentioned before, it is important to build on trust and put in the hands of users also the management rights and the ownership rights. So for these reasons, as Lewis University and also many other colleagues from other universities in Europe and in the US, we created this new program called Law, Digital Innovation and Sustainability, which will create this new figure in large organizations, public, social and private organizations that are called Chief Innovation Officers or Chief Sustainability Officers. And they will be entrusted with the task to really design innovation and bridge the different actors of innovation, public, private, civic, knowledge, and social actors. We are going to have also a summer school later this month that will be an anticipation for this new Master of Science program that Luis is delivering. These are my references. Most of the literature is available online, open source. And I just thank you for your attention, and I hope that I made sure that we recovered some time. Thank you.
네,
Thank you very much for the presentation, Professor Christian-Ae. You talked about the need for cooperation and collaboration among communities.
협력 경제를 위한 미래 시나리오 발표.
Next, we will be hearing about the future scenario for a cooperative economy.
Hello to everyone, and thank you for inviting me. I'm very happy to participate. So basically, what I would like to talk about is commons-based. And what I mean with this is, I think it's time to rethink our institutional vision. So traditionally, in industrial society, we see industry, business on one side, the economy, and we see the government on the other side. And a lot of our politics has been this permanent wave between periods where we favor more planning and welfare, and periods where we develop more liberalization of business. And our very language, when we talk about the civic sector, we talk about non-profits, we talk about non-governmental, really shows us that we see this as a derivative category. So what I'm kind of inviting us to do here is to think of what if we recognize that the commons is a real institution and can function as one of the three basic institutions of our society. And I think there is a kind of an argument to be made that a number of cities have started. So I'll just briefly read 2 minutes from a list. So the first thing I want to mention is, of course, Italy. And basically, I think what Christian-Ae was talking about is very much part of it. This is what I call public commons protocols, public commons cooperation protocols. So once you recognize the initiative of citizens to create commons, shared resources that they manage themselves or through a group of stakeholders, then what you have to do is organize a smooth collaboration between the public sector and the commons sector. This was very visible now with the COVID crisis in the context of, certainly in Europe, a quite massive state and market failure on medical infrastructure and medical supplies. And the first presentation was about that, about how Seoul, what you call the hackers and the makers mobilize themselves to an enormous degree in these countries to substitute for the lack of medical equipment. But what was lacking very clearly was a cooperation protocol to make that easy. So in many cases, there were many problems in accepting those contributions. And that's basically what the Bologna regulation has done, which has been copied by so many other cities, I think 250, maybe a bit less, I'm not sure. But the last presentation I heard from a person that was active in this movement said they estimated between 800,000 and 1 million Italian people mobilized around urban commons. So this is the kind of thing we need to kind of massify this cooperation. And I don't know if Harmen knows anything about the CAC Accord in Amsterdam, but it seems to me to be very similar, and especially interesting is the commitment of the city after a number of years to bring up 10% of the budget of the city through these public commons cooperation. So I think this is quite interesting. So very quickly, Naples now has a city-based department of the commons with an assessor of the commons. Let me see. So from Barcelona, I noted several policy plans that are specifically dedicated to knowledge commons, like the Barcelona City Council Open Digitation Plan and the Barcelona City Data Commons. I also noted a wave of commons labs is a bit different, perhaps, from the city labs that were mentioned, because those labs are specifically dedicated to developing commons in their cities. So just to give you two examples, three maybe, Commons Lab in Antwerp is one I know very well. The Hague, that was started this year, and there is one also active in Sydney. In France, there are about 20 assemblies of the commons, chamber of the commons, sometimes they're called factory of the commons, and they actually already have substantial political influences. They already produce commons proposals for the election cycles. Okay, now I want to go to the slide that you're seeing. This was a study I did in Ghent in 2016, where, like many other European cities, we can see kind of an explosion in the number of urban commons. There were 50 in 2006 and 500 in 2006. And so just maybe mention two innovations that I think are interesting in the context when we start looking at the commons as an institution. So what you see here on the slide is basically, so Ghent has seen, like other cities, that when you can have a multi-stakeholder collaboration, that ecological transitions can speed up to a significant degree. And there is a study showing, for example, in terms of food transitions, that if you have a food council for about 10 years, that's when really the change starts accelerating. So this is the Food Transition Council in Ghent, and what I want to stress is what I call the notion of contributory democracy. This is not participatory democracy, it's not deliberative democracy, it's integrating the commons actors in the deliberation of the transition policies. So I think you can see it there, the transition platform, that's specifically what I want to talk about. So what they did there is actually integrate the food transition makers, the groups, in the council and give them decision-making, co-decision-making authority. I think this is a very important principle, and it's different from, for example, participatory democracy, where you ask people what they would like to do. This is recognizing the people who are already contributing to the ecological transition in the city. Another brief, maybe example of something that was done in Ghent is called a call for common. I thought this was a very interesting concept. So this is basically an idea to think in a new way about city procurement. Traditionally, city procurement is very competitive, winner takes all. That means that a lot of energy is going to be lost, a lot of proposals are not going to be recognized. And a call for common is a form of procurement which actually says, we will give the budget to the coalition that is most successful in bringing people together. So in this case, it was an 8-story building, a temporary occupation, as they call it. And in 2 months' time, 70 organizations succeeded in making a common plan. 8 stories, every story had a function, and each level had its own contributive council to plan for the 2 years of activity. I think this is an interesting idea to transform procurement away from purely competitive logics to collaborative logics. If you can show me the second slide, which I want to spend a bit more time on, but that will be quite shorter than the others, so that we can gain time. So the idea here is that a few years ago, I was traveling in the region of Tuscany and visiting Florence and looking at the solidarity economy in that region. And this is a few years ago. At that time, there were 13 different software programs to order organic food. So I'm talking about these new ecosystems for organic food production, where a coalition of consumers, a coalition of producers create a common ecosystem that is based on solidarity. So it's market, yes, because of course the food is bought, but the food is bought at a fixed price, which covers a percentage of the production of the farmers. So there is a solidarity with the climatic conditions. But the point I want to make here is that there's enormous waste in recreating the same type of software for the same type of function again and again and again. And so this is where I think the notion of protocol cooperatives is very important. So the notion is that there's a new type of organization that is organized around common protocols, right? And just to give you an idea what that was, think back a few years, 15M and Occupy. These were not centralized organizations, but they had common protocols which allow people to say, okay, if we accept this principle, we can call ourselves with the name of this initiative and be part of a global movement. So what's interesting is this existence of a common layer of cooperation. And so this is a bit of a proposal, but maybe Alvaro can tell us later, because I know that Barcelona and Amsterdam are already talking together around housing, sharing housing protocols. So maybe if you have time, you can tell something. I just read a press article, so I don't know the details, but this is basically what I'm talking about. So imagine like every city has Airbnb, every city has Uber. We already have coalitions of cities that want to regulate together these very large and fairly dangerous corporations. But this is a step further. This is actually building the alternative together. Just to give you an idea of the way I think about this is that, so when you do, let's say, permaculture, right, you are very local, you are working on a very local piece of land. At the same time, you're connected with the global design community of all the people in the world doing permaculture. So this is the idea of cosmo-local production, where the heavy stuff is done close to the needs of the people, but the knowledge is shared very, very widely. And so I see the cities and alliances of cities as a potential form of global governance that can coexist with nation states and continental organizations like the European Union, because what they do together is form these common protocols for the common infrastructure of cooperation. So imagine every provisioning system, food, habitat, or shared mobility, shared housing, that is actually using collective tools that don't have to be evolved separately every time. Of course, you can adapt them locally, you can change them locally, but it's the open source principle where everybody can change to their own use, but they share the advances with the global community. So here you have on the slide 4 layers. The first layer is the common governance of these protocols. And basically, what I suggest this was actually layer 2 that I'm describing, but layer 1 is the institutional layer which funds and produces it. So these are coalitions of cities with ethical finance, with solidarity economy players, and maybe more mainstream players that decide collectively to finance these global depositories, which will be used in all the individual cities. I want to end with something I discovered recently, which is an interesting phenomenon, because it actually shows that it's quite possible to do this already. So in Brussels, there is a maker community called the Micro Factory. And it's part of a coalition of 120 places in Europe that call themselves multi-factories. And so they're different from the co-working spaces and the maker spaces because they are based on craftsmen actually producing things and making livelihoods through this activity. So they're productive commercial projects of professionals that want to live from their activity. And so at the same time, they're available in 120 different locations. They usually take over abandoned factories in the post-industrial fringes, and they use principle of mutualization and open source management to collectively manage their local initiatives. But all together, they work on what they call the invisible factory. And this is the place where they collaborate across distance on common projects and put their designs in a common pool. And so at the same time, they're very local. At the same time, they're cooperative. And at the same time, this is a fully open source sharing, in this case at the European level, but this could very well be a global project. Yeah, I think this is basically, okay, maybe one more thing and then I can end my presentation. And this is, I think, quite fundamental. So if you want to do a successful eco-social transition, we have to think about value. And why is that? Because we live in a society where we only recognize commercial value, and then we need taxation or philanthropy to redistribute it. And that means that generative activities that genuinely improve the life of communities, are structurally marginalized. And so I've been talking to a regional government for a project that would institute a public ledger. Now, just if you're interested, there's already a proposition for law in New York City to create such an inclusive ledger. And so I just want to explain very briefly how you can imagine this. So the idea is to find financial mechanisms that directly fund proactive, generative citizens. Community Land Trust in France, the Terre des Liens project, has already calculated in 2016 that their activities in doing organic farming in French departments saved the government 300 million euro per year in depollution efforts. And this is the issue. There are today very few mechanisms that allow a circulation of these savings. So you have people creating positive externalities, but they're not rewarded because that kind of activity is not commercially recognized. So if you have a shared public ledger where people can certify their activities, for example, people who do biochar farming can prove that they reduce the carbon. And so you have a verification entity which confirms the activities of the citizens. And it is then tokenized on these shared ledgers that are fully transparent. And then the next step, of course, a more difficult step, is to fund these tokens. This can be done both by normal budgeting, but also by making agreements with institutions to share the profits and the benefits they get from these positive externalities. Okay, these are just a few ideas I wanted to leave with you that kind of, for me, derive from this idea of taking the commons seriously, not just as a small local project of a few people, that just engage themselves to do something good, but as a part of the structure of our cities, as something that when you think, okay, we have public-private partnerships, we can think about public-civic, public commons partnerships, or public-civic business partnerships. But the idea of recognizing the commons as an institution for me is quite important, and I hope it may lead to some thinking about this in the future. Thank you so much.
네, 감사합니다.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Next,
대표님의
I would like to give the floor to the co-founder of Shareable, Mr. Neil Gornflow.
못하셔서 영상을 녹화하여 보내.
He could not participate, and therefore he has provided us with the video.
Hi everyone, I'm Neil Gornflow, Executive Director of Shareable. I'd like to thank Mayor Park and Seoul Metropolitan Government's Innovation Department and my colleagues there who have organized the summit and invited me to participate. I really appreciate it. Thank you. I'm going to share my screen, my slides now. Just bear with me. All right. So in the next 15 minutes, I'll share some ideas about sharing cities in a post-COVID world and break the idea out of its past conceptual frames, or at least try to. For instance, thinking about sharing cities as merely an engagement with the platform economy or sharing as a behavior. And in doing so, I hope to expand the sharing cities paradigm, if you will, so that it can better enable cities to realize their potential for global transition. And I think cities must change in several fundamental ways to realize that potential. For instance, I think they must become more self-governing, more independent from nation states, more self-sufficient financially and materially, more democratic, their residents much more engaged in governing urban resources and everyday commoning, and better able to cooperate and share resources with each other. I'll expand on this vision a bit and then share 5 ways cities can head down this path. So let's start with a bit of context. While the growing instability of our biosphere and global civilization are worrying, to say the least, the prospect of a rise in city power is an exciting silver lining, because it is in self-governing city-states that civilization has historically been born and also reborn. To paraphrase historian Jeffrey Park in his book Sovereign City, Renaissance can happen without city-states. They go hand in hand. This isn't such a stretch as it might sound at first, as cities have always been the cradle of civilization. Some thinkers have gone so far as to say that city-states represent civilization at its best. However, the rights and powers of cities remain too subordinate to global capital and nation states to truly take the mantle of leadership in global transition. While cities have a disproportionate amount of economic power, they often lack an equivalent amount of political power. And many of the most powerful nation states, including the US, legacy political systems haven't caught up with the reality of our new global urban civilization. Moreover, the pandemic has shown how dangerous this is in an era of rising, globally networked populism and authoritarian national regimes. In the US, Brazil, and elsewhere, there's been a shocking amount of conflict between local, regional, and national governments in their pandemic response. Unfortunately, citizens have paid with their lives and livelihoods for the added confusion, delay, and lack of coordination this has caused. Local and regional governments have often taken the safer, more scientifically sound courses of action to manage the pandemic. This isn't surprising, as they tend to be more pragmatic and accountable to their constituents, not to mention, less ideological. The pandemic not only shows that cities need more independence from global capital and nation states, it shows the opportunity that cities have to enhance their global leadership. But I take it one step further and say that they also have a responsibility to enhance their power as they are one of the most important levers for global transition. Cities are already leading the way on a range of critical issues, climate change being a prime example, yet their progress is not yet fast or thorough enough. I doubt that cities will be able to realize their potential as agents of global transition within existing legal and political arrangements, but rather will need to work around, change, or even contest them. Cities will likely need to redefine the relationship to the residents, to each other, and to their nation-state host in order to realize their potential for transition. This will need to be a redefinition that leverages cities' soft power, their culture and economic power, on the way to winning more hard power, the legal and political sort. That said, such a redefinition can't leave rural areas behind as cities have done in the recent past. It's worth considering combining the ancient Greek idea of the polis with newer ideas like bioregionalism and regenerative development, which put place, social, environmental, and cultural values center stage. In this context, we can stretch our imagination and think about how cities of today can fight COVID-19 and other shared challenges into the future. Here are 5 ideas to consider, just a few of many footstones that need to be laid toward a better future. So, number 1, municipal finance. How can the huge amount of money that cities control be better leveraged for transition? For instance, cities' purchasing power, massive balances they keep at commercial banks, which commercial banks leverage to create credit. Cities could do the same, and some do. The huge pensions they control and more. Such innovations like public banking, participatory budgeting, local purchasing, and pension investment strategies can put the power of the public purse to more public benefit and enhance the soft power of cities. I wonder too about how cities could work together to create new cross-border financial institutions that would enable them, for instance, to amass their capital and create their own credit, exchange surpluses through a mutual credit system, create digital currencies, and start funds that invest in local businesses. As it is, cities are now even more strapped than before the pandemic. In some cases, national governments have made the situation worse by stinting on or delaying aid to cities. Cities would do well to internally fund transition as much as possible and lessen their financial dependence on national governments and otherwise create new commons-friendly circuits of money. Okay, number 2, platform cooperatives. Much of the platform economy is centered in cities. In what ways can cities work together to foster or create locally controlled, wealth-spreading platform businesses? Why not create platform businesses on a franchise model with shared ownership on a local level and shared infrastructure, marketing, and branding on a global level? There's no better time as technology barriers are minimal. Technology frameworks exist to quickly and cheaply build platforms. The key challenges are governance, scaling, and design, not technology. Cities have played nothing but defense up to this point, and perhaps it's high time for them to play offense. Number 3, local production, shared global supply chains. Cities can lead a strategic retreat from an unsustainable peak of production and consumption by localizing and mutualizing the local economy, yet establishing shared global supply chains. There may be a prosperous way down, to borrow from the title of a book that applies the principles of ecosystem ecology to energy descent. And in that book, it really focuses on how to, not to stop a collapse or slow a collapse, but how to organize a collapse and benefit from that organized collapse. Open source models deployed within and between cities would be a key feature of such a strategy. Michelle Bound's concept of cosmo-local production applies here, which in short is about locally controlled production using globally shared knowledge. This, along with shared global supply chains, would increase food security, prevent shortages of key material, and improve disaster response. Okay, number 4, grassroots mutual aid. Pandemic created great need. People responded with an unprecedented wave of grassroots mutual aid. This was a global phenomenon involving millions of ordinary people, and I think this is an opportunity to make this high level of citizen engagement a more permanent feature of city life, and maybe a platform strategy can be combined with this. Number 5, infrastructure for sharing. Seoul and many other cities have experience with sharing neighborhoods, urban villages, co-housing, co-living, and other forms of urban intentional community. COVID-19 also has cities around the world rethinking the use of streets, parks, and public space to give people more space in cities. This experience has profound implications in the post-COVID world because while we tend to take them for granted and overemphasize the role of individual behavior change, our social networks, physical environments, and more, our total context have more influence on our behavior than maybe anything else. So how can this experience be expanded through cities' spatial organization, built environment, and platform footprint to foster more widespread and daily commenting? And how can it create a kind of total context for commenting? All right, just to wrap here, I'll close with a thought. We live in a many-peopled world with different languages, cultures, religions, and ideologies. These differences have been dangerously heightened recently. This really scares me. But yet, we have an opportunity here. It's in our shared needs and visions grounded in the places that we love, where our differences have the best chance to be reconciled. This takes us beyond divisive issues into the realm of what's possible together. Cities can walk this path together as stronger, more independent entities, but hand in helping hand. So with that, I'll end and just thank you for listening. Thank you very much. Have a great conference. Bye.
네, 감사합니다.
Thank you very much. Now moving on to the last speaker, Commissioner Alvaro Porro of the Barcelona City Council Social Economy, Local Development and Food Policies will present about Barcelona's approach. Please be prompt and finish your presentation within 10 minutes.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to try to show my presentation. Sorry, I don't know what is going on. I'm having a problem. Sorry, just 1 second. I'm going to try, see whether it works now. You see? Sorry.
네, 지금 올라오는 게 시간이 오래 걸리면
If it takes too long, maybe we can hear from one of our panelists first.
선생님께서 슬라이드 없이 일단 말로 먼저 하시면
Or
안 될까요?
maybe Commissioner Porro, would you mind presenting without your slides?
Okay.
Maybe you can kick it off and then wait for the slides to come up.
Can you hear me again? I'm going to try without the presentation because I don't know why it's not working. So I'm gonna try to follow on my own. Well, first thing I want to thank you, Seoul, for the invitation, and I'm very happy to share with all these very high-level speakers and face I know already. So thank you very much. I also want to thank Seoul because they take the lead in the summit, in the organization of the Seoul City Summit. So I very appreciate this step that Seoul take. And also I wanna stress this really important relation between Asia and Europe in these moments. And how these kind of events and the relation between Seoul and Barcelona are like really strengthening this relation, which I think is very important to face all these challenges that we have. Basically, I would like to focus my intervention in some practical measures we've taken in Barcelona. I have to be honest that the intensity of the health emergency and now the economic emergency is not allowing us so much for reflection. So we are still in this process of making the reflection. I don't know if other cities are having the same problem, but so it's been very inspiring for me to hear Chris, Harmen, Michael, and the chief of Cerebral because they can bring us this long-term, mid-term reflection that sometimes when in the daily management of the emergency we cannot really have it. So basically, one of the main elements for us in Barcelona is when we have to face a big challenge. For us, it's very important that we have like a common agreement. That we set up a stage where we can be sharing our views and make agreements together with the economic actors, with the social actors, with the political actors, with the cultural actors. So one of the main things I think we have to stress out about Barcelona, the way that we are dealing with COVID and with the economic and health crisis, is through something we call the Barcelona deal, which is basically we create a space where we could discuss and set up like a common working plan among all these different groups, so that we can all work together. And that's very much a Barcelona style. Sometimes it's difficult to get these agreements done, but for us, at the end of the day, it's worth it to try it. We divide it in 4 working groups: economic, urban model, social rights, and cultural and sports working groups. And that's basically where we are trying to build up now. Now that we are a bit getting out of the health emergency and trying to get into a new phase, we are now in this process of building up this Barcelona deal. So if I look at the measures and share some examples more related to my own area, my own department, and to other ones, because it's, as you can imagine and as you have been explaining, the amount of measures and the amount of initiatives that have been happening inside and outside public administration is very, very, very much bigger. First, for us, it was being very important to set up a central digital website where all the information for citizens where it was posted every day in almost every aspect you can imagine. I've been counting now, and there was like about 120 different themes where you can get information and useful tools, useful links, etc., about how to deal with the situation from almost every perspective you can imagine, and that becomes a bit like let's say like a meeting point. But it didn't have only just a unilateral direction, but also we through the platform called Decidim Barcelona, which is a platform we have for political participation of citizens that has been working already for a few years, and a lot of cities and regions are been using. It has become a place where a digital place where citizens could exchange knowledge, we could exchange needs, we could exchange resources in a very bi-directional way. So one of the first learning is like the infrastructures we have created before the pandemic on interaction with citizens are being very useful then when we are in the emergency period. Another important element, and you've been already talking also, is like how we've been trying to trigger networks of citizens and companies to build and make all the materials we need through when the emergency was happening, especially in the highest point, and we couldn't manage to get them through the global markets. I mean, especially all the health equipment. And we are very happy because we work in creating this network in two lines, more like a community network of like individual and groups of people just building in their house masks for the health professionals. And another one with small local companies doing the same, but in a higher quantity, in a bigger quantity. This network, I'm not going to explain the whole thing how it worked, but the municipality was doing a facilitation process, but ended up doing 1 million masks in a really short period of a network that didn't exist before. So all this combination of community-led networks together with the facilitation of municipality, public administration is being very important. Then another aspect and this is happening more in this second phase of the process, is that all the work we've been doing, especially with the super blocks strategy, which is very much related with some of the things you've been saying about recuperating public space for citizens in the city and creating a space for sharing. Public physical spaces for sharing. All this work on cultural and infrastructural work has been very much now an advantage that we could now push forward. And then in the short term, we are pushing, like, apart from all the biking infrastructure, all the walking paths infrastructure that has been almost doubled in this moment. All these super blocks are getting now a lot more like social support and are going to be growing also fast in the next months. So again, things that have been done before, then in the moment of the emergency, you can, if they give you results, they give you answers, you can push forwards. So it's very important to be pushing all these topics let's say in the normal moments, so you can take the advantage in the emergency moments. About now, we are very worried about the economical crisis. As you can imagine, health emergency is a bit in a better situation. And as you know, here it's been very, very, very strong, very intense. But now we are very much working in all the economic dimension, economic front line, because the economic crisis is going to be quite big in Spain and Catalonia. And basically, one of our main elements is how all these infrastructures and economic policy, quite heterodox economic policy, trying to work on the proximity level, let's say in the small micro level in neighborhoods, and all the social economy, sharing economy, all these, let's say, alternative perspectives on economic practices. All that, again, is being very useful now because we need different perspectives, we need different tools that in this new moment, and all these policies we've been building beforehand are now being very useful. It will be very long to explain, but for example, just one short example I think it's been very interesting is like we create some labor rights information points because the labor market here is quite has a lot of negative aspects. And all these labor rights information points that we've been creating in the neighborhoods before, now they've been having an amazing use because all the economic crisis creating a lot of labor markets problems and a lot of attacks.
대표님, 이제 시간이 별로 없으니까
I'm really sorry, but we don't have much time. So could you please wrap up?
Okay, so just to finish, for us, food policy has been a very important element. I'm not going to explain all the measures we've been taking because there's no time. I'm just saying that as some of the other speakers said, food system, economic system, climate change, mobility, energy, all these model system of our cities needs to change. The COVID, the pandemic has given us the opportunity to do it, and Barcelona is wanna lead, at least apart from sharing economy together with Seoul, wanna lead this path on food policies. So in 2021, we really invite you all to participate in how we can create sustainable food system. Barcelona is gonna be the sustainable food world capital, and we think with one of the elements that we are all learning from COVID that food system could have an amazing opportunity to be changed. Thank you very much, and sorry for the technological problems.
감사합니다. 사례 발표에 여러분들 수고해 주셔서 감사드리고요.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank the presenters. There were some technical issues, and I don't think I managed the time well.
또 너무 급하게 발표를 하시게 되기도 하고
So some of the presenters had to keep their presentation a bit short, and others took up some time. We were supposed to have a panel discussion, but I don't think we can have that panel discussion as planned. However, we would like to hear from researcher Seung-Won Lee from SNU on this session.
예, 반갑습니다.
It is a pleasure to meet all of you. Actually, I plan to have a longer panel discussion, but I think we will have to have a panel discussion on our workshop and Urban Sharing Summit, during the Urban Sharing Summit.
에 대해서 제가 이제 진심으로 감사를 드리고요.
First of all, I would like to thank the presenters for their presentations. And one thing that I would like to say is that actually I'm going to be asking questions instead of providing my comments. The speakers are from Europe. Neil, of course, it was in San Francisco, but in Europe, you are living near one another and you are also living within the European Union. Therefore,
있음에도 불구하고
despite your diversity and differences, I think there is a structure for cooperation, and Alberto Porro mentioned briefly that Asia and Seoul in particular, how can we cooperate with you?
이야기를 들어오면은
And listening to Michelle Bowen's, it feels like there is a lot of opportunity for cooperation. However, cities in Asia and cities in Europe, I would like us to think about ways in which these cities can cooperate. And we also need to have concrete discussions on what we will be cooperating on. And during our next discussion, we will be able to have more detailed discussions on this. And how can we persuade city governments so that city governments can work together? And due to time constraint, I think that I will have to wrap up my comments and questions.
Thank you very much for sharing meaningful words on desirable urban sharing models. Ladies and gentlemen, this brings us to the end of this session. And today, various problems such as climate change and resource depletion and equality are occurring as cities become larger. And as we have discussed today, I hope we can overcome this current crisis through the new ecosystem of urban sharing. Thank you very much once again. And after having a short break, we'll come back with the sixth session from 9 p.m. We'd like to ask for your continued support and interest once again. Thank you.